The classroom fell silent as the teacher called for attention. The teacher, a fairly large, reptilian-like creature known as a Vinook, was highly intelligent and skilled in teaching. Today, his tone was unusually stern, which made the class focus intently on what he was about to say. "We are having an exchange student," the teacher announced. "An exchange student from Earth. A human." The students were stunned. One of them, a thin, fur-covered biped called a Zien, was visibly terrified. He had never encountered a human before, and the recent information about Earth's harsh conditions had made galactic news. Earth's environment was so extreme that it had to be given a new classification. "She'll be here in 10 minutes, the teacher added. The class was a mix of curiosity and fear. They wondered what a human would look like. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. "That must be her," the teacher said as he opened the door. The principal walked in, accompanied by a human girl. The principal whispered something to her, and she began to speak. "Hello, I'm Eevee Rose, and I'm from Earth. It's very nice to meet all of you," she said in perfect galactic standard. The class was surprised. Eevee was smaller than they had expected, even shorter than some of the smallest students, but they noticed she had a fair bit of muscle. "Eevee is fine with any of you asking questions," the teacher encouraged. After a brief pause, a few students raised their hands. The teacher pointed to one student. "Ard, you go first." Ard, a predator species with more bravery than most, spoke up. "I'm sorry if this sounds rude, but how come you're so small? I thought you came from a hell world." "That's a great question," Eevee replied. "The reason I and many humans are small is due to our planet's high gravity. Earth's gravity pulls us down at 9.8 meters per second squared." The class gasped in amazement. The average gravity pull on their planets was usually less than half of that. "Wait, how are you walking so casually? Shouldn't you be unaccustomed to the gravity here?" Ard asked, puzzled. Eevee smiled and pulled up her sleeve. "I'm wearing weighted clothes. Actually, they're heavier than what I would feel on Earth." "That's incredible," Ard said, impressed. As Ard ran out of questions, another student raised a hand. The teacher nodded to them. "Sano, you can go next." Insect-like creatures called Sarav were known for their excellent vision. During a conversation, Sano stuttered as he realized he didn't have a word for what Eevee had pulled up. "Oh, it's called a sleeve. It's part of my clothes," Eevee explained, tugging on her clothing. "Thank you. When you pulled up your sleeve, I noticed your arm. Is it made of metal?" Sano asked. "Yes," Eevee replied, stuttering slightly. She had only recently received the prosthetic. "May I ask why?" Sano inquired. "It's no problem. I just got it recently. I was attacked by one of Earth's native predators called a bear while hiking. My arm was too badly damaged to be repaired, so they had to amputate it. Fortunately, this prosthetic is better and stronger than the original," Eevee explained. The class was shocked. Only the toughest species could survive such an attack, but to not only survive but thrive with a lifelong debilitating injury was unheard of. "Thank you for the explanation," Sano said, somewhat shaken. A few more students asked questions until it was nearing the end of the class period. "Okay, class, that is enough questions. We need to get ready for the next lesson," the teacher said loudly. The bell rang, and the students pulled out their books for the next class. "Hey, sit next to me," ID said to Eevee. "All right," Eevee replied with a smirk. ID had been extremely happy to hear that another sentient predator was in the galaxy. There were only a few predators in the galaxy and even fewer in the school. "All right, class, we will be talking about the most recent development in weaponry," the teacher said. "I'd like to add a disclaimer. This weapon is probably the most extreme one we've created," the teacher explained nervously. He had only recently learned about this weapon and it terrified him. "I'll send you an image of what it looks like, so you can try and guess what it is," the teacher said. Eevee pulled up the image of the bomb and began examining it. Something about it looked familiar. It had wires around it and was circular with some small openings. She could have sworn she'd seen it before. "Does anyone have an idea?" the teacher asked. The room remained silent. "All right, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it is going to be tested in about 3 minutes," the teacher said, grabbing a remote to turn on the classroom's television. A mock city and a ship appeared on the screen where the device was set with researchers positioned very far away. Reminds me of old nuclear tests, Eevee thought. Wait, old nuclear tests? Is this a nuke? No way, it should be. Eevee pondered. The countdown began, and all the students waited in anticipation. 3, 2, 1. Boom. The screen lit up, revealing a giant mushroom cloud. It is a nuke, Eevee thought. She raised her hand, hoping to find out why an average nuke was considered revolutionary. Yes, Eevee. Is everything all right? The teacher asked. I wanted to know, was this weapon meant to split the atom? Eevee asked. That's exactly right, Eevee. I'm surprised you knew, the teacher said. I assume humanity may have stumbled upon the possibility of using this sort of weaponry, the teacher questioned. Actually, we already did use this weaponry, Eevee said with a bit of pride. Wait, what? The whole class shouted. Oh my, Eevee, that is very incredible, but I simply can't believe it, the teacher exclaimed. The Galactic Confederation has been developing these weapons for years. Are you sure you're thinking of the right weapon? The teacher asked. Yes, sir, I am sure. I believe I am correct, Eevee replied confidently. My planet was going through an extreme war when we developed these weapons. A war? But from what I've read, your planet hasn't engaged in wars with other planets, the teacher said, puzzled. Well, we've had wars among ourselves, Eevee explained. That's unheard of, Eevee. Why would your species fight among themselves? The teacher questioned. It's hard to explain, Eevee said, pausing to gather her thoughts. Our species has been fighting for survival since the beginning. That fight extended to other humans over food, territory, or even just for fun. We started with sticks, then moved to clubs, swords, guns, bombs, and eventually, we developed that, Eevee said, pointing at the screen with a hint of disgust. Thank you for explaining, but that doesn't explain how humanity could create something so advanced, the teacher said. A simplified explanation is that our top scientists came together to start the Manhattan Project. In 3 years, they successfully created a machine bomb that could split an atom, Eevee elaborated. Eevee was always interested in war and the machines used in it, though explaining it in terms understandable to others was challenging. Thank you for the explanation. I know you're probably not an expert on the subject, so I'll wait until official documents come out to fully understand what you're explaining, the teacher said, regaining his composure and realizing it wasn't fair to ask a student to explain such complex topics. Okay, Eevee replied, sitting back down. The class went by quickly as the teacher discussed which planets worked on the project and provided a brief summary of the planet's history. As the lunch bell rang, Ovad approached Eevee. So, what's your home like? He asked. It's nice. I live in a large city, but my family goes hiking a lot. I miss them, Eevee said sadly. I miss mine too, but remember, we can always contact our parents, Ovad replied. That's true, Eevee said, smiling a little. They walked into the dining hall and went into the carnivore line. Eevee grabbed a piece of meat and some shrimp-like creatures, then walked past Ovad's table. Hey, I'll be there in a sec, Eevee said, heading to the herbivore line. Everyone in the line looked confused but ignored it. Eevee grabbed some fruit and a salad before joining Ovad. I thought you were a predator. Why aren't you just getting meat? Ovad asked. Well, I'm an omnivore. I can eat both. Aren't there other omnivores? Eevee asked. I've never heard of anything like that. Humans are very weird, Ovad said. I guess, Eevee chuckled. They both started eating and finished about halfway through the lunch period. Eevee laid her head down on the table after asking Ovad to wake her up a minute before the bell. She hadn't gotten much sleep the night before, being one of the few students attending multiple galactic schools and acting as an ambassador for her entire species, which made her extremely nervous. But now, she felt better. 29 minutes passed and Eevee, who had fallen asleep, began feeling taps on her back. She lifted her head. Thanks, Eevee said, stretching. No problem, Ovad replied. Eevee pulled out her schedule and saw that gym class was next. Gym class, Eevee said to herself, smiling. Wait, will I be able to wear this? She wondered, looking at her prosthetic. I'll ask when I get there, she thought. Eevee walked to the girls' gym restroom and changed into her gym uniform, ignoring the judging looks. She sat on a bench next to the now-changed Ovad, who looked extremely happy. "What's got you all happy?" Eevee asked. "Well, I know what we're doing today, and it's my favorite. I wanted to surprise you," Ovad said with a large smile. "All right," Eevee said. The gym teacher, an alien named Kolner, walked in and began taking attendance. "Today, class, we will be playing a new game that we've recently been informed about," Kolner began. Eevee looked over at Ovad, who looked upset. "Hey, maybe next class you can play the game," Eevee said, attempting to cheer Ovad up. "The name of this game is dodgeball. The rules are simple. We will place 20 balls in the middle of the gymnasium in a straight line. 2 teams of 10 will be on each side of the line. When I say go, run and grab the balls, then run back to where you started. You can move around, but don't cross the line where the dodgeballs were placed. Your goal is to hit the other players on the other team with the ball. When you are hit, go off to the side. If you catch the ball, the person who threw it is out," Kolner explained. "Awesome. This is a human game," Eevee said to Ovad. Many of the students looked nervous. "All right, let's pick teams," Kolner said.